9 tails, 0 chill. Akatsuki Creative occupied the 4th floor of a building with a leaky elevator and a lobby directory that still listed a dentist who had died in 2019. The frosted glass on the door said Akatsuki Creative brand. Growth. Vision, in a font Sasori had chosen personally, and would defend to the death, which, in his case, was a phrase people tried not to use around him. At 8:47 a.m., Payne was already logged into 6 Slack workspaces at once. This was not, strictly speaking, necessary, but 6 years ago, during a particularly bad quarter, Payne had discovered that if he split himself across 6 different Slack personas, Deva, client-facing, calm, godlike patience, Azura internal ops, blunt, allergic to small talk, human, HR adjacent, says I hear you a lot, animal vendor relations, uses a golden retriever as his profile picture for reasons no one has ever questioned, Prada finance liaison, communicates exclusively in bullet points, and Naraka, legal, terrifying, replies only to threats. He could attend 6 meetings simultaneously without his soul visibly leaving his body in any single one of them. Everyone knew all 6 accounts were Payne. Nobody said anything. It was more efficient this way. And at Akatsuki Creative, more efficient had long since replaced sane as the operative design principle. Deva Path is in the client call, he murmured to no one, adjusting one of the 6 monitors, arranged around his desk in a semicircle like the world's saddest planetarium. Prada Path is in the budget review. Naraka Path is currently telling opposing counsel that we will, in fact, see them in court, even though we will not, because we cannot afford a court. From the doorway, Conan didn't look up from the printer, which was jammed again, with the kind of intimacy that suggested it and Conan had history. You have the Kairubi deck review in 11 minutes. All 6 of you? I'm aware. Are you aware you haven't slept? Human Path slept. Human Path always sleeps. It's the others. Conan extracted a mangled sheet of paper from the printer's jaws, smoothed it flat against the counter with the unhurried competence of a woman who had once, allegedly, folded 4,000 paper cranes in a single week to hit a client deadline nobody else believed was hittable, and set it gently on top of a stack that was already twice as tall as it should have been. She was, by unanimous and entirely unspoken office consensus, the only person at Akatsuki Creative who actually knew where anything was, the master brand calendar, the real budget, not Kikuzu's budget, the real one, the Wi-Fi password, and the truth about what happened to the Sambi account. Today's the day, she said. Kairubi decides by 5. If we don't land this, Payne, we don't make payroll in October, I'm aware, Payne said again, in the exact same tone, which was either very reassuring or the opposite of reassuring, depending on how well you knew him. The Kairubi account was, at Akatsuki Creative, less a client and more a weather system. 9 business units, 9 executive stakeholders, each with sign-off authority, none of whom had ever once agreed with any of the other 8 on anything, up to and including whether the company's own logo was red or more of a burnt orange. 3 agencies had already pitched, and been quietly, catastrophically devoured. The rumor was that the Konoha agency across town had once gotten so close to landing it that they'd started measuring their new conference room, only for stakeholder number 7 to veto the entire campaign on a call that ran for 4 hours, and ended with him asking, unprompted, whether the color palette captured rage, but, like, contained rage. Every agency in the district called at the Kairubi account the way sailors used to talk about a specific patch of ocean. You didn't go looking for it, it came for you, ate your quarter, and left. Akatsuki Creative had built its whole identity, at this point, around chasing exactly this kind of account. They had the Ichibi account already, a sand and aggregate company run by a 19-year-old CEO who hadn't slept since founding and communicated in one-word emails, all of which were somehow devastating. They'd had a shot at the Hachibi account until the client's founder, a former backup rapper who insisted every single piece of copy scan and rhyme, got poached by a rival firm that let him freestyle in pitch meetings. Nobody at Akatsuki had forgiven Hidden for that loss, mostly because Hidden hadn't stopped talking about it. Kairubi was the whole company's white whale. Today they were pitching for real. Final round. 5 o'clock deadline for the deck, 4:30 walk through 2 p.m. Live pitch to stakeholders 4, 6, and 9, the 3 who'd survived the semi-final round without recusing themselves in protest. Nobody in the building had slept properly in a week. This included the plants. Morning stand-up happened at 9, in the conference room with the one whiteboard nobody could get the ghost marker off of. Attendance was, as always, less mandatory and more a fascinating study in who was scared of pain that week. Kisame arrived first, because Kisame was always early, always cheerful. and always wearing a tie with a small shark print that he insisted was subtle. He had the build of a man who could physically pick up the conference table, and the demeanor of a golden retriever who had, through some administrative error, been given a business card that said Senior Account Director. He dropped into a chair beside Itachi, who was already there, already still, already looking at a laptop with the expression of a man reading his own eulogy and finding it a little derivative. "You didn't sleep," Kisame said. "It wasn't a question." He said it every morning. It was never a question. "I'm fine," Itachi said, which was what he said every morning, in the same flat, unbothered register he used for everything from creative reviews to, apparently, whatever was going on with his health that nobody in 6 years had worked up the courage to ask about directly. He'd coughed twice on the walk-in. Kisame had heard it. Kisame always heard it. And always, with the tact of a man who understood some doors weren't meant to be opened at 9 a.m. on a pitch day, said nothing except "Want my coffee?" "I got decaf by accident," and slid the cup over. Itachi was, by broad consensus, the best creative director the agency had ever had, in the specific sense that he produced work so quietly, so completely, and so far ahead of deadline that most of the office had stopped being surprised, and started being faintly afraid of him. He'd once rewritten an entire campaign brief in the time it took Kisame to microwave a burrito. He never raised his voice. He rarely explained his reasoning. He was, by every account, the only person in the building who could walk into Stakeholder 4's office and leave with a signed approval, a phenomenon the rest of the creative team referred to, without irony, as doing a jinjutsu on them, which was office slang for making a client believe the ad had always looked that way. Deidara and Sasori arrived next, from the same office, mid-argument. The way they arrived at literally everything. "It's not art if nobody remembers it in 5 minutes, Deidara was saying, gesturing with a tablet displaying what appeared to be a 14-second video ad that consisted mostly of a slow zoom into an explosion of confetti-colored particles. "The whole point is impact. You see it, it goes off in your brain, boom, and then it's gone, and that's the beauty of it. It's supposed to disappear. Ephemeral is the art, It's a fireworks display made by someone who has never made a fireworks display," Sasori said, not looking up from the small wooden diorama he was carrying under one arm like a briefcase. "A brand is not a bang. A brand is built to last. I have built brand identities that clients are still using 11 years later. Nobody remembers your bang past the next scroll. That's the point." "Sasori, no Dana, you don't get it because you build things like they're going in a museum. They are going in a museum. Metaphorically. My work outlives the client relationship, which is more than I can say for whatever you're proposing, which will outlive approximately one Tuesday." This was, roughly, 90% of every conversation the two of them had ever had. In 6 years of sharing an office nobody else wanted to share with them. Deidara was the agency's motion and social lead. A true believer in virality, velocity, the beautiful violence of a video that hits 9 million views and vanishes into algorithmic dust by Thursday. Sasori ran brand and packaging, and treated every logo like a small wooden puppet he was carving to outlive its maker, which, upon reflection, was a slightly disturbing way to think about logos, but nobody had the emotional bandwidth to unpack it. His office, their shared office, was lined with miniature mock-ups of past campaigns preserved under glass domes like taxidermy, each one lovingly, unsettlingly perfect, each one exactly as it had looked the day it launched, frozen forever. Deidara found them creepy. Sasori found Deidara's entire portfolio, which existed mostly as compressed video files, that occasionally corrupted, to be an affront to the very concept of permanence. They had, at last count, been formally warned by HR 14 times for volume. Zetsu kept the file. Zetsu arrived last, or rather, arrived twice, because Zetsu was, technically, 2 people occupying one body, and one HR title. A fact the org chart handled by simply not addressing it. White Zetsu did all the actual talking in meetings, warm, reasonable, endlessly patient. Black Zetsu did the muttering, and the performance reviews, and the parts of onboarding involving at-will employment. "Good morning, team," White Zetsu said, taking a seat, smiling. "You're all going to die on this pitch," Black Zetsu added, in the same breath, same face, same mild tone, as if reading the weather. "He means we believe in you," White Zetsu clarified. "I really don't think he does," Kisame said. The deck fight started at 11:15, and by the time Conan intervened, had already claimed 1 printer cartridge, half a bag of pretzels, and Sasori's patience, which had never had much structural integrity to begin with. The problem, the specific, 140-slide problem, was that the Kairubi pitch deck needed an opening, something to hook 9 stakeholders who had already sat through 3 failed agency pitches, and had, according to reliable backchannel intelligence from an intern who used to work at Konoha, developed the collective attention span of a caffeinated squirrel. Deidara wanted to open on video, 15 seconds, high energy, a rapid cut sizzle reel set to a track he described as a bang, but, like an emotional bang, that ended on a freeze-frame explosion of the Kairubi client's product line mid-air. All 9 SKUs, suspended perfectly in a single glorious burst before the screen cut to black, and the Akatsuki creative logo appeared, small, confident, done. Sasori wanted to open on stillness. A single slow pan across a physical mock-up. His physical mock-up, built over 4 sleepless nights, a museum-quality diorama of the client's flagship product rendered in impossible, tiny, hand-painted detail, while a voiceover, unhurried, laid out the brand's 100-year vision. No music, no cuts, just craftsmanship, allowed to sit there and be craftsmanship. They have 40 minutes for this whole pitch, Deidara said. 40. You want to spend the first 2 of them on a slow pan. You want to spend the first 15 seconds on an explosion, in a room full of executives, who have already watched an agency's video and literally lag and buffer mid-pitch, and lose the account on the spot. You are going to open with a video file, on this Wi-Fi, in this building. This landed, because everyone in the room had a visceral memory of the building's Wi-Fi, which Kakuzu refused to upgrade on the grounds that the current router still worked. Technically, in the sense that it was still plugged in. Fine. Deidara snapped. Fine, We'll do both. We'll do the video and the diorama. We are not doing both. We have 40 minutes. Then we'll do both in 20. Conan, who had entered the office to deliver revised talking points, and instead found herself standing in what amounted to a hostage negotiation, set the papers down with the specific, quiet finality of a woman deciding a fight was over whether the participants agreed or not. You're doing the diorama, she said to Sasori, for 90 seconds, with your voiceover, because it's genuinely the best work either of you has ever produced, and I'm not letting ego bury it. And then, to Deidara, you're doing 15 seconds of the sizzle reel as a button at the very end, after the ask. So if the video buffers, it buffers on the exit, not the open, and it doesn't take the whole pitch down with it. Silence. That's, Deidara started. Structurally sound, Sasori finished, visibly annoyed at having to admit it. I know, Conan said. Already walking out. I run this place. By 1 o'clock, the office had begun its slow transformation into something closer to a submarine during a hull breach. This was made marginally worse by the fact that today was also, unfortunately, Kakuzu's birthday. A fact nobody had remembered until Hidden burst out of the break room, holding a cake he had personally, and loudly, insisted on ordering as a sacred offering. For Jashin's sake, you ungrateful heathens, it's the man's birthday. Kakuzu, the CFO, regarded the cake the way most people regard an unexpected invoice. How much was that? He said. Not thank you. Not you shouldn't have. Just the number, extracted like a splinter. $40, and don't start $40. For sugar. That we will consume, and that will provide 0 return on investment. It's a birthday cake, Kakuzu. It's not supposed to have an ROI. Everything has an ROI. Morale is a metric. I will allow this specific expenditure to be logged under Team Morale, Q3, but I want it on record that I object, and that I am 54 years old today, an age at which the average person has accumulated significantly more retained earnings than I have, because this company pays me in equity, that Payne assures me will be worth something. It will, Payne said, passing through the break room mid-sentence on his way to somewhere else, Devapath's laptop tucked under one arm like a football. Eventually, probably, that is not the reassurance you think it is. Hidden, undeterred, had already lit the candles, all 54 of them, because Hidden did nothing by half measure, including birthday cake pyrotechnics, and was attempting to organize a chorus of happy birthday that Zetsu, white half, joined enthusiastically and Zetsu, black half, sang one full beat behind, in a lower register, like a horror movie echo. Itachi, passing through for tea, said nothing, but did, almost imperceptibly, mouth along, which Kisame would later describe as the nicest thing I've ever seen him do, and which nobody else in the office noticed because they were all staring at the cake, which had, alarmingly, begun to smoke. Hidden, Conan said from the doorway, in the tone of a woman who had budgeted exactly 0 minutes today for a fire. Why does the cake have 54 lit candles indoors, 4 feet from the smoke detector? On the single most important day of this company's fiscal year, tradition demands, the smoke detector went off. It was, in retrospect, a preview. The fire alarm turned out to be a false start. Conan had it silenced within 90 seconds, a personal record. But it did knock out power to half the 4th floor for 6 unbearable minutes. during which Dieterich stood in the server closet insisting he could feel the render finishing even without electricity. Sasori sat with both hands protectively over his diorama's glass dome as though it might be looted in the chaos, and Toby, whose actual job title had never been fully clarified by anyone, including possibly Toby, attempted to help by unplugging things at random to find the problem. Because Toby is a good boy who fixes things, this was, by any reasonable audit, the 7th time this month Toby had caused a minor infrastructure incident. He had previously jammed the industrial paper shredder with what he described as old papers nobody needed, which turned out to include the only physical copy of a signed contract. He had once organized the supply closet so thoroughly that nobody could find a single stapler for 3 weeks. He wore a mask to the office. Allergies, he claimed, though nobody had ever seen him take it off even to eat, which he somehow also managed to do, constantly, loudly, and with visible enthusiasm for vending machine snacks. And yet, at 1:52 p.m., 8 minutes before the deck was due for its 4:30 internal review, someone quietly, invisibly fixed a formatting error across all 140 slides that would have crashed the presentation software mid-pitch, a fix that required knowledge of a software bug so obscure that even the agency's actual consultant hadn't known about it. Nobody saw who did it. The activity log simply read, T 1:52 p.m., resolved. Did you do that? Kisame asked Toby directly, watching him attempt and fail, 3 separate times, to correctly staple a single sheet of paper. Toby doesn't know what you mean. Toby is just trying to staple this, but the stapler is broken, it keeps not working. Toby is very sorry, right? Kisame said slowly, the way a man says right when he has decided, for his own peace of mind, not to pursue a thought any further. Right, of course, nobody pursued it. This was, at Akatsuki Creative, the unspoken agreement about Toby, that he was either the single most incompetent employee the agency had ever hired, kept on for reasons of pure institutional inertia, or he was, somehow, quietly running the entire company from behind a cartoon orange mask, and that asking which one was true would only get you an answer you weren't prepared to sit with. Payne, when once asked point-blank by a new hire why Toby still had a job, had simply said, Toby is important to this company, in a tone that closed the subject permanently, and the new hire had transferred departments within the month. The pitch itself began at 2 o'clock sharp in the good conference room, the one with the working projector, and the chairs, that didn't spin unpredictably. Stakeholders 4, 6, and 9 dialed in with the specific, weary body language of people who had already sat through this exact meeting with 3 other agencies and expected, this time, to be equally disappointed. Sasori's diorama sequence went first and went, by every account, beautifully. 90 seconds of slow, reverent camera work across a miniature so exact that stakeholder 6 actually leaned into her camera to ask, unprompted, is that hand-painted? It was. Sasori did not smile, because Sasori essentially never smiled, but Conan, watching from the back of the room, saw his shoulders drop half an inch, which was, for him, a standing ovation. The pitch was working. Payne, Deva path today, voiced, patient, opening every sentence with we understand, and closing every sentence with a number, walked the stakeholders through positioning, through the 100-year brand vision, through market data that Prada Path had compiled at 3 a.m. Itachi's copy landed exactly where it was supposed to land. No wasted words, no flourish. Every line built like it had always existed, and they'd simply found it. Stakeholder 4, notoriously the hardest of the 9 to move, actually said the word compelling out loud, and the whole room felt it. A small collective intake of breath, the specific electricity of a pitch that might, against every historical odds, actually work. Then came the button. 15 seconds. Dieterich's sizzle reel. The confetti-colored burst, the freeze frame, the logo. The video buffered for 1 second, 2 seconds, and then, instead of failing gracefully, did something no one had anticipated. It played, but at triple speed, and with the audio pitched up into a shriek, the visual explosion smearing across the screen in a corrupted, strobing blur that looked, to everyone in the room, less like a triumphant brand moment and more like the opening seconds of a home invasion. Stakeholder 9, on video, visibly flinched. Turn it off, Kisame said, too loud, lunging for the laptop. I'm trying, it's not. The file's corrupted. It wasn't corrupted an hour ago, unplug it, Sasori said, with the specific satisfaction of a man watching a prophecy fulfill itself in real time. I am unplugging it. Don't. The screen went black. Silence. 9 stakeholders on video call, staring, in the exact stunned way people stare at a fireworks accident. For 4 full seconds, Nobody in the Akatsuki creative conference room breathed. Then Conan, who had not said a single word during the entire 40-minute pitch, leaned forward, smiled with the calm of a woman who had, in fact, quietly kept a backup of Deidara's file from before his 1 p.m. re-render specifically, because she had watched him work for 6 years, and trusted his creative instincts roughly as much as she trusted his file management, and said, "Apologies, we wanted to show you a rough cut of an alternate concept. Since we know 9 different stakeholders means 9 different tastes, here's the polished version," and played the correct file, clean, crisp, exactly as intended, off her own laptop, without missing a beat. Stakeholder 6 laughed, actually laughed, and said it was refreshing, honestly, to see an agency that isn't afraid to show its work, which was generous, and untrue, and exactly what the room needed to hear. They didn't get a yes that day. Kairubi accounts didn't do yeses that day. That wasn't how 9-headed corporate hydras worked. But stakeholder 4 said, on the way out, send over a follow-up, which, in the sacred and specific language of client pitches, was the closest thing to hope that Akatsuki Creative had gotten from this account in 4 years. At 6 p.m., the office exhaled all at once. Kakuzu's cake, mostly uneaten, sat in the break room fridge, one slice methodically cut out and boxed by Kakuzu himself, who had written "do not touch," budgeted on a sticky note and affixed it with the seriousness of a man protecting state secrets. Hidden was still humming the birthday song, off key, an hour and 40 minutes after anyone had asked him to stop. Zetsu had filed the day's HR incident report, smoke detector, 1. Corrupted video file, 1. General chaos, ongoing, in a folder labeled, and black Zetsu's handwriting, normal Tuesday. Deidara and Sasori sat in their shared office in a silence that was, for them, practically tender. The diorama was good, Deidara admitted, not looking up. Really good, the button worked. 15 seconds. Even corrupted, it made an impression, Sasori said, which, from him, was a full apology, and a eulogy for his own argument at once. Don't get used to it, I wouldn't dream of it. Itachi had gone home early, or rather, had been sent home by Kisame, who'd noticed the second cough of the afternoon and simply said, "Go," in a tone that, for once, Itachi didn't argue with, which worried Kisame more than any fight could have. Nobody asked. Nobody would. That was, unspoken, the deal. Payne sat alone at his desk with all 6 monitors finally, blessedly, dark. 6 Slack statuses, all set to the same message, out, will respond tomorrow, which was, for a man who had spent the entire day distributed across 6 versions of himself, the single most human thing he'd typed all week. Conan appeared in his doorway, 2 cups of tea in hand, setting one down without comment. "We didn't get it," Payne said. "We didn't lose it either?" She sat, unfolding a small paper crane from her pocket and setting it on his desk. The day's 200 and something, next to a small and growing flock that lived permanently on the windowsill. "That's a good day. Around here, down the hall, in the supply closet nobody could ever find anything in. A single desk lamp clicked on, through the crack in the door, if you were looking, and nobody ever was. You might have caught a glimpse of someone sitting perfectly still at a small folding table, reviewing, with unnerving speed and total silence, every slide of the Kairubi deck, correcting 3 typos Itachi himself had missed before clicking the lamp back off and slipping out into the dark, humming, badly, off key, the same birthday song Hidden had been singing since noon. "Toby is a good boy," said the voice, to no one, satisfied. The office, for once, was quiet. It wouldn't last. It never did. But for tonight, that was enough.